最後まで読んでおったのはお前の中。我がその苦しみを終わらせてやるまでな。
Trek to Yomi beautifully pays tribute to the timeless allure of 20th century Japanese cinema, captivating enthusiasts with its nostalgic charm. This artfully crafted game embraces the esteemed Jidaigeki genre, skillfully weaving historical tapestries amidst feudal Japan's captivating landscapes. The lives of samurai warriors, enigmatic ronin, and an array of intriguing characters from various epochs of Japanese history enrich the experience, leaving a cherished cinematic legacy. On that token, Trek to Yomi's meticulously crafted elements, from the main menu style to the text, the film grain, and the cinematic aspect ratio, compose an authentic symphony that immerses players fully in the mesmerizing world of the Japanese past. But presentation aside, successfully gamifying cinema or television has always proven to be a tricky endeavor, particularly for such a niche genre. So how does Trek to Yomi fare here? Well, let's find out. Initially unfamiliar with the meaning of Yomi as I embarked on my journey, I soon discovered its significance in Japanese mythology and Shinto beliefs, a realm encompassing the afterlife where departed souls find their abode. Revered as a place of judgment and spiritual residence, Yomi lends its essence to the title of the game, hinting at the setting's profound connection. You begin the game assuming the role of a young warrior named Hiroki, undergoing training with the esteemed master Sanjuro. However, your peaceful routine is abruptly shattered when word arrives of a bandit attack on your village. Amidst the chaos, Hiroki's love interest, Aiko, urges him to assist his father Sanjuro in defending their home, despite his master's orders against it. After battling through many adversaries, Hiroki witnesses the tragic fate of his master, who, before succumbing to his wounds, imparts upon a solemn vow to protect Aiko and the village in this life and the beyond. Thus the narrative sets forth, initially embodying the classic archetype of a revenge-driven hero, but with some potential twists. Without spoiling the story any further here though, let's first explore the game's world. Trek to Yomi stands as a supreme embodiment of visual splendor. Despite its monochromatic palette, the game effortlessly captivates players with its extraordinary lighting, shading, and mesmerizing effects. The meticulously crafted world beckons players into a captivating experience of Imperial Japan, especially when played on a large 4K screen with its cinematic aspect ratio and old film grain that further enhance its allure. Throughout the game, the cutscenes unveil picturesque shots that showcase the game's artistry at its finest, but the cinematography here surfaces as the true star. It features unique camera angles for each scene, reminiscent of classic Resident Evil games, as it provides a blend of 2D silhouette-style shots and clearly integrated background elements in 3D ones. The camera focus also dynamically shifts depending on the player's character movement, heightening the immersion. The cinematography is very relevant here, as Trek to Yomi is essentially a curation of forced perspectives that are often breathtakingly beautiful, so it usually feels like you are playing through a classic movie, and it has to get these right. I'll get into why I use the word usually in a moment. The sound design and voice acting in Trek to Yomi are also remarkable, attaining a level of excellence that matches the standards set by popular anime movies and shows. As a casual fan of Japanese media myself, I do think that the voice acting is on par with the best in the industry, so don't you dare change the voiceovers to English in the settings.
あんたら鬼は取れるものは全部取っただろう。おっか、誰だ？目をつぶってな。
待たれよ、拙者をご存じないのか。
おめえが誰だろうと知ったこっちゃねえ。
The music also complements the setting impeccably, although a touch more variety would have been welcome. All in all, the game boasts exceptional visuals and solid sound design, leaving one craving for an equally astounding story and gameplay experience to crown it as a masterpiece. However, this is where Trek to Yomi begins to reveal its shortcomings, much like a samurai bearing vulnerabilities beneath his resolute exterior. Let's start with the controls. As mentioned, the game is technically 3D, but the camera's perspective is fixed and cannot be changed or moved. Visually, the locked camera perspective does create some stunning results, but its implementation demands meticulous attention to character movement to avoid hindering gameplay, a feat that is unfortunately missed by the developers here. Your character often gets stuck against random objects instead of fluidly maneuvering around them. Seemingly straightforward movements even demand slight adjustments on the y-axis as you grapple with unintuitive movement mechanics, attacks, and the constant shifts in camera angles can disorient even the most stalwart warriors. The general controls are decent enough to not be a deal breaker, but they do hinder the smooth, immersive gameplay one might encounter in a game like Limbo. A more honed and polished approach to movement would have led to a far more seamless and pleasurable journey through the wondrous world the devs have painstakingly crafted, but alas, that's not the case here. The combat, unfortunately, is even worse. Just like the general controls, the combat here isn't unserviceable, but it falls prey to shallowness, lack of precision, and predictability of execution. Although characterized as a side-scrolling action game, Trek to Yomi's world is actually 3D as aforementioned. Consequently, the combat relies predominantly on single-axis movement and damage system, but is occasionally augmented by interactions with foreground and background elements. You can use simple combinations of light attacks, heavy attacks, and 3 range attacks, and you can also parry and block attacks, do a rolling move, and execute stun targets. But that's pretty much it. You may think, well, it's a side-scroller game, what more did you expect? I would normally agree with this sentiment, but here's the problem. Trek to Yomi suffers from an unfortunate lack of enemy variety, featuring only light targets, armored targets, and ranged targets, with boss fights sprinkled in between. However, the absence of distinct challenges and the monotony of facing identical foes persist throughout the game, leaving little room for strategic planning, resource management, or adaptability. As a consequence, combat swiftly becomes repetitive and uninspired. Slash the same enemies, proceed to the next section, repeat the process, and so it continues ad infinitum. When this monotonous loop converges with clunky mechanics and a shallow combat system, the overall experience transforms into an arduous chore, one that players will just wish to get over with as the game progresses. In stark contrast to classic Capcom beat-em-ups, like the more than 3-decade-old Final Fight from 1989, Trek to Yomi falls short in the realm of combat enjoyment. In games like Final Fight, the controls flow intuitively, offering a delightful variety in atmosphere, enemy types, weapon choices, and interaction with the environment. I loved playing this game as a kid, and I'd happily play through it once more as an adult. While beat-em-ups are obviously not known for their depth, they can be immensely enjoyable and satisfying for the right audience. The key lies in combat that remains enjoyable, free from frustration, and with mechanics that function consistently as intended. As mentioned before though, combat regrettably devolves into a tiresome chore very quickly in Trek to Yomi. You will find yourself grappling with issues such as being unexpectedly combated despite parrying, encountering unresponsive counterattacks, and the inconvenience of both running and rolling bound to the same button. Alongside other minor grievances, the combat experience became so progressively cumbersome for me that I just ended up opting for the lowest difficulty setting mid-playthrough, just to progress swiftly through the hordes of the same enemies and reach the next section as quickly as possible. There was no point in playing the game at higher difficulties when all that did was prolong an unenjoyable grind. The Yomi section of the game, while surreal for understandable reasons, presents a considerable contrast to the vibrant Japanese village where the story begins. Disappointingly, this section that takes up a significant portion of the gameplay is even more monotonous and visually uninspiring, prompting you to push through the ghosted enemies with little engagement even more so than you did at the beginning. The inclusion of several boss fights offers some intrigue, but the aforementioned lack of depth and persistent janky controls still remain and hinder the overall experience. Okay, it would be unfair to say that the combat looks and feels fantastic when it does click together and flow smoothly, as some of the slashing animations and combos that are nicely executed are very satisfying to pull off and watch. However, these cinematic moments you create are few and far in between, and again, they lose their novelty quickly after the first few encounters. There are also some puzzles in the game, but they are so easy and straightforward that I question the necessity of their existence altogether. It's just another thing to get over with as you push through. And then there's the choices in the game, which initially may seem like a beautifully adorned samurai sword displayed in a shop window, enticing players with the promise of wielding its power and shaping their destiny. However, once you do pick up this sword and unsheath it, you realize that the blade was nothing but a hollow, ornamental piece, incapable of cutting through the heart of the story. Well, to be less abstract, what I mean here is that the choices you make in-game bear little to no consequence. Unless games deliberately revolve around the theme of the illusion of choice, akin to those like Spec Ops: The Line or the Stanley Parable, wherein this concept is skillfully interwoven into the story and gameplay, merely presenting players with choices that bear no real consequences thereafter holds little value. Without revealing spoilers, most of the choices in Trek to Yomi amount to naught, with the final decision impacting only the cutscene you watch at the end. This implementation feels disappointingly lackluster, squandering this game's storytelling potential. The theme of revenge and the dichotomy between one's heart and the duties of a samurai could have been explored much more in depth. Players could have been confronted with said moral dilemmas, making choices that shaped the kind of samurai and human they wanted Hiroki to be. Options could have been offered between sparing lives and exacting vengeance to raiders, between pursuing the bandit leader or staying back to prioritize the safety of the villagers, and digging deeper into the theme of sacrifice, for the village, for Sanjuro, or for Aiko. Sadly, instead of embracing this potential, players will find themselves confined to a linear path, with all the challenging choices already made for them. As a result, the game's narrative feels scripted, relegating players to spectators rather than active participants shaping their epic samurai tale. Look, spearheading a linear game is completely fine, as exemplified by the masterful storytelling of the Last of Us games. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen here. It pains me to say that I really wanted Check to Yomi to do more, considering its stunning visuals, captivating cinematography, immersive setting, and outstanding voice acting. But it falls short in delivering a fully polished gameplay to accompany its amazing audiovisual experience, leaving much to be desired. Despite all this, I'm still glad I spent a few hours of my time playing this game, and it personally added some perspective to my videographic pursuits. Fans of Japanese media may be more forgiving towards its imperfections, and that's entirely understandable. But for the average gamers out there, I can't help but feel disappointed to give this game such a low score, knowing its evidently missed potential. Nevertheless, it is still a worthy experience overall in my opinion, especially if you already have an Xbox Game Pass subscription, or if you can pick it up on a big sale down the road. Thank you for watching everyone, and be sure to subscribe to Gamenoob for more game reviews and commentaries like this one. I appreciate the support. Stay happy, be good to each other, and until our paths cross again, sayonara.